I should have known better than to try and write this on my phone, because now I'm looking at this tiny little type. I'm going to tell a general overview of Caryn's life. Caryn was a quiet, private person, and I hope she will forgive me if I discuss her life publicly like this. I want to tell you some of the things she loved, some things she longed for, some things that made her laugh, and some things that caused her pain. So Caryn was born October 8th, 1981. Her middle name, Janelle, was our grandmother's name. Janelle Burton Henderson was thrilled to hand down her name. And you may find this hard to believe, but tall, lanky, skinny Caryn was a thick, chubby baby. She didn't just have double chins, she had triple chins and these massive chubby thighs like you just couldn't believe. But one thing that never changed is that she was always absolutely adorable. So there are 7 brothers and sisters in our family, and Caryn is the baby. But there's a really large age span across us. And so our oldest sister, Caryn, is 24 years older than Caryn. And our next sister, Kathy, is 21 years older than Caryn. And so that means that when Caryn was born, her oldest sisters were already married and starting to have kids. And so Carrie has 7 kids, and Kathy has 6 kids. So technically, Caryn grew up in a family of 7 kids, but because Carrie and Kathy lived close by and visited all the time, it really, literally felt a lot like she grew up in a family of 20 kids. Caryn's nephew, Brigham, her niece, Heather, are her same age. Their brothers, Breton and Nathan, just a little younger. They grew up really close and spent a lot of time together. Brigham and Caryn were so close as babies, they formed their own language like some twins do. They would come into the room. One of them would babble something completely incoherent, to which the other one babbled something totally incomprehensible, and then they would just nod their heads like it was all decided and run off to do whatever they had just discussed. And all we could do was just smile and shrug our shoulders. So one time, there's a group of adults sitting in the living room talking, and Brigham and Caryn come in, and Brigham tells his mother, Carrie, that they need a blanket so they can make love. And all the conversation in the room just freezes. And everybody stares at them, and Carrie says, "You need what?" And Brigham says, "A blanket to make love." And I remember my neighbor leaning in really close and staring. I could just see the wheels spinning in her head. And we were so relieved when we figured out that they wanted to put a blanket over a card table so that it draped down the sides to make a club. After this service at the luncheon, Brigham has prepared a video where he tells stories of growing up with Caryn with hundreds of pictures to go along with it, and I hope you'll join us for it. Our father absolutely doted on Caryn and on our sister Kristen. To be honest, it made our brother Mike and me seriously jealous. But he just piled love onto her. Kristen and Caryn knew when it was time for Dad to get home, and they would stand by the door waiting for him to arrive, and then they would run out to climb on him. And he encouraged this because he brought them home candy every day. So he would carry them inside and sit on the couch with them on his knee, and then the searching would begin. In his jacket pocket, behind his back, they knew he always brought them candy, and of course the candy always ended up being inside their own ears. He would pull it out of their ears and they would squeal with delight. It really was an idyllic childhood. Our dad was a big believer in family vacations, so we spent a lot of time together. We didn't have to go anywhere extravagant, but we loved Yellowstone and Zions National Park, St. George and Park City, and every year or two, we had to go back to visit some of our parents' friends and family in Southern California. And these were the days before kids had headphones. So for a long time, our car didn't even have a cassette player. So on these long drives, we did a lot of singing. I've been working on the railroad all the livelong day. She'll be coming round the mountain when she comes. These were our vacation theme songs. and we did a lot of finding the whole alphabet on license plates. So we made plans when we got older to just put signs every few miles on the highway that said, JQZ, you're welcome. But no one can have a life without pain. So Caryn was only 3 or 4 years old when our dad had his first heart attack. The next year he had a stroke, and just before Caryn turned 6, on August 20th, 1987, our father had the heart attack that killed him. And of course, that changed everything. With 5 kids living at home, a huge burden fell on our grieving, overwhelmed mother. Our oldest sisters, Carrie and Kathy, came around a lot more often, and that really cemented our big family to be even closer. One time, Caryn told our mother that she was going somewhere, and our mom said no, and Caryn said, well, Carrie already said I could. To which our mother replied, Carrie is not your mom. And Caryn frowned and said, I thought I had 3 moms. But several of us, myself included, still think of Carrie's first husband, Bruce, as a surrogate dad. He was really good to us. A few years later, we sold our house in Bountiful and moved to a townhome, actually not far from here in Fruit Heights. Caryn started studying ballet. She played soccer. She really loved swimming. She spent a lot of time at the pool. The kids had to earn our own spending money, so Caryn started selling candy. She would sell it over by the community pool, and it got to the point where the kids in the neighborhood would save up their money and then come knock on our door and ask for Caryn. Holidays have always been important to Caryn. When she was younger, she would stay up with our mother on Christmas Eve wrapping presents, and when our mother got tired, Caryn would send her off to bed, and Caryn would stay up and finish all the wrapping and make sure everything was perfect. Later, as an adult, she continued that tradition with Kristen, going over to Kristen's house every Christmas Eve, where they would stay up wrapping presents and laughing late into the night. A few years later, our mother remarried to Harry Samuel Johnson, and they moved to Randolph, Minnesota. That was a big change for Caryn. Caryn fought a lot with Harry. I'm so glad that later she reconciled with Harry, because she always loved him. She was just a little rebellious and didn't want to be told what to do. And in her teenage years, she started using drugs, with no idea what that was doing to the path of her life. Eventually, our stepfather, Harry, retired. They moved back to live in Kaysville. A few years later, Caryn married a man named Chancey Taylor. It was a short-lived marriage, but it also introduced a new pain into her life. Caryn lost several babies, was told that she would probably never carry a child full term. This was one of the greatest sources of pain in her life. She wanted to raise babies. She wanted so badly to be a mother. That pain eventually made it uncomfortable for her to be around her family with all our babies, because it made her so sad to see them. And after her divorce, Caryn entered into the darkest part of her life. Her addiction to alcohol and narcotics dragged her down to death's door. And here I want to stop. And I want to add that we are eternal. That everything that really is Caryn already existed and will always exist. Her essence, her soul, was not created nor made, neither indeed can be. And I'm so very glad that the next step in this path was for God to send her to us here on earth. That she came here and received an amazing, beautiful physical form. But part of this physical existence is learning the consequences to our action. And Caryn knew about harsh consequences. In a letter she wrote to her mother later, Caryn said that when she found God through her recovery, that suddenly a lot of things she learned growing up made sense and meant so much more to her. When Caryn had a clear enough head and knew she had to change, she threw herself into it. And that's what we're expected to do. When we realize we are wrong, we pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, change our course, and help others. In the LDS Church, we call that repentance. Caryn found 12 wonderful, inspired steps that laid out the map of how to do it, and she committed herself with her whole soul to that program, and it changed her life. Now Caryn has moved on, but she is not gone forever. She is absolutely still with us. She absolutely still exists, because this life is not the end. She's moved into the arms of her father Jim and her stepfather Harry. She's awaiting the resurrection when we'll all rise up and embrace each other again. In the LDS Church, we don't believe in hell like many other religions. We don't believe people are consigned to suffer forever and never be able to escape. We believe when the scriptures talk about eternal suffering or never-ending suffering, that just means they're connected to God, who is eternal and never-ending. So instead of the traditional concept of burning forever, we believe everyone eventually inherits a degree of glory. We believe that a loving God lets us learn from pain, but that pain is only about learning. That pain is only about the consequences of the things we do that cause pain to others. And if that pain is the teacher that guides us and molds us, it's because we are becoming something glorious. And so whatever blessings we receive, whatever happiness we receive because we have learned the rules that govern that happiness. But God lifts us all out of that suffering. He guides every one of us into happiness, and we inherit glory, and we enter into love. Caryn's love and Caryn's warmth were God's love. And so many people could feel God's love through her. Well, I would love to say that Caryn emerged from her addiction like a butterfly crawling out of a chrysalis, but that's not how it worked. She was more like a fireball exploding from a volcano. Caryn has always been quiet and private, and that didn't change. But suddenly she was driven by an unstoppable will. She was going to make it to a meeting every night. If we invited her somewhere and it was too far away for her to make it to a meeting, she wouldn't go. She was passionate and driven and committed. Caryn is quiet. She thinks things through in meaningful ways, rolling them around in her head and looking at them from all different angles. So when she tells you what she thinks, it makes you stop and see the world a little deeper and a little brighter. That made her a really good listener, especially because she was so full of love and grace and understanding. That made her someone you trust, because she gets you and loves you, flaws and all, and lifts you up. But that quiet nature also means you don't always get to know her and what's going on in her life. This was even more complicated for her family, because once Caryn started into recovery, she felt like she had found a tribe of people who understood her and where she felt comfortable. And the difference was jarring between the people who got her and the rest of the world. And so she only felt comfortable around other people in recovery. So I am so grateful for all her friends who have come around in the last week, telling stories about Caryn, because we and her family have missed so much of her life. I really hope you'll come to the luncheon where we'll have a microphone set up again, because I want to hear as many stories as you can give me of all the great and funny and embarrassing and impressive things that Caryn did that I don't know about. When Caryn was at the deepest point of her addiction, she disappeared almost completely. We only saw her a handful of time over the span of a couple of years. She finally came to a family party once, and we were all terrified because she looked like a skeleton. Later, Caryn told me she got down to 73 pounds, and she looked like she should be dead. It wasn't long after that Caryn went through rehab and started going to meetings and came back from the edge. I know we lost her way too soon, but I've decided to see this as a gift. She was doing everything to kill herself back then, and probably should have been dead. So I see these last 6 or 7 years as a gift, a bonus that we shouldn't have had, and I'm just grateful that we did. Of course, yes, we were so grateful when she started to get clean and we saw her getting stronger and wiser all the time. But she still didn't come back to us completely. She had a new family, all of you who are her friends in recovery. Knowing where she had been and where she would be now if she hadn't cleaned up, we did not begrudge her that choice at all. We are so grateful to you for taking her in and lifting her up. We missed her. We would reach out, attend meetings with her, try to include her in family events, and try to be part of her world too. But there was always a bit of distance, like a curtain separating our two worlds. And only now, as you tell us stories about her and all the wonderful things she did in your world, only now do we get to pull back the curtain just a little and see so much more of her life that we missed. Thank you. Thank you for taking her in, loving her, and allowing her to love you. She's caused a lot of pain this week. I have a hard time forgiving her for ending her own life. How could someone who gave such deep, powerful love to so many people do something so selfish and cowardly and pathetic? If someone had murdered her, I would mourn her and my heart would wail in pain. My anger toward her murderer would be uncontrollable rage. But how do I reconcile when my poor sister, the victim, who I love and miss so much, and her vicious murderer, who I hate so much, are the same person? I have to be able to love her completely. That love cannot be contaminated with this anger. I have to let go of it. I have to forgive her. I have to remind myself of something I know is true. Your mistakes do not define you. Stupid things you have done are not who you are, even if it's something like this that you can never take back. Sometimes Caryn seemed like she was made out of joy. She was made out of a love that embraced everyone. She was made out of generosity. I know I'm going to spend a lot of time crying over Caryn. But I know that joy and love and that generosity are what built Caryn up and connected her to me. When our father died, I was a teenager and I went through a dark time. Spent a lot of times listening to songs that reminded me of him and of my pain. And I thought that wallowing in that pain was some kind of show of how much I loved and missed him. But I can't do that with Caryn, because sorrow and isolation are not just painful. They are the thing that destroyed Caryn and took her away from me. So there will be sorrow, and I will miss her. But that sorrow and isolation are not going to get a hug from me this time. I am not going to hold on to sorrow and isolation and pretend they are meaningful. If I wrap myself up in the sorrow and fear and embrace the isolation, I am embracing the things that destroyed Caryn. But every time I find joy and love and generosity, I'm finding my connection to Caryn. I want to embrace those. I want to find the joy, because loving that joy is loving my connection to Caryn. So I'm going to choose joy every chance I get. I'm going to choose generosity. I'm going to let the sorrow wash over me, acknowledge it, but I'm not going to put my arms around it and pull it in. I'm not going to tell myself that embracing the things that destroyed Caryn is some kind of sign of how much I loved her. Instead, I will love Caryn by loving joy and love and generosity. Caryn, I will miss you so dearly, but I will honor you. And if I spend the rest of my life trying hard, it will still be hard for me to do as much good in this world as you did. But that's not going to stop me. Because someday, I want to put my arms around you and have you be as proud of me as I am of you. Thank you so much to all of you for coming, for loving Caryn, for putting your arms around us and around each other. And I leave these messages in the name of my Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.